I'm currently fasting. It's a perfect time, therefore, to share something with which I've been sitting, now standing. For all, I won't share this video until the fast is over. I still want to mention it because when you're well into a fast, there's a certain slowness. And what may appear like a fogginess. And I strive to speak with clarity. So I apologize if it seems slow for many. And speaking of this slowness, earlier when I was sitting out in the grass, deep in consciousness, deep in that slowness, deep in the eternal moment, something drew my attention outwardly. There's a fly on the arm. And as I mentioned, there's a certain slowness, so I didn't involuntarily react. Simply observing it. Even the black flies, that's why I'm wearing long sleeve now. Black flies, I gotta tuck the shirt in, maybe that'll help. But I was simply observing it. He ain't hurt nothing, right? Didn't want to kill him. And I started thinking, this is what I really want to mention. Let's say the fly lives for 2 years, or 2 days. That's more plausible, right? That's more likely. The fly lives for 2 days, and you live for 100 years. So your 50 years is 1 day for him, and 2 days for him is his whole lifetime, is 100 years for you. So what does this tell us? This tells us that time is a relative experience. It's a relative, subjective experience. It's not fixed. It's dependent on the living entity, whatever that may be. Whether it be a fly, me, you, or somebody else. And when we come in tune with this slowness, whether it be through a prolonged fast, you start to realize that our consciousness is eternal. It's transcendent. It's transcendent to time. A prolonged fast can help us embody this transcendence. And embody might not even be the best word, because it helps us see beyond the body, mind, and emotion complex. And detach from the world of sense. To see beyond the five senses. Not just intellectually, but viscerally. We feel it and witness it as the witness in consciousness. Experientially, we witness this profound transcendence, this subjective experience, which is beyond time. And infinity and eternity. You realize that oneness, that wholeness, which is nevertheless always with us, even when we're not fasting, even when we seem in a state of drivenness or rushingness or of wantingness, and our attention is directed outwardly, not necessarily just at a fly on the arm. And I don't need to use the word just. You can chuck the word just, because that fly is a profound intelligence. It's the same intelligence that is beating our heart, beating my heart as I speak, beating your heart as you listen. That same profound intelligence that whatever state of consciousness we're in, whether we're operating primarily from survival and from the bottom of the spine and from the root chakra, which is, oftentimes thinking in terms of time and feeling in terms of time. I gotta do this, I gotta do it. It's good to slow down. Come in tune with that slowness. We can do this through a fast. There's other methods. I'm not saying it's the only way. I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm not even saying it's my way. I'm not claiming it. I'm just saying it's a profound method. It's been time tested. It's ancient. Animals instinctually fast. It's not just a Christian thing. Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Islam, all these different religions and traditions teach it. And I'm by no means an expert at this. It's a way of life. It's spiritual development and growth is a way of life. It's not something that you do once and it's over. It's not something that you say, oh, I did a 7-day fast and, that's in the past and I did it once and that's it. No, it's a way of life. Anybody can say, hey, I did this great thing in the past, but what are you doing now? Are you living that way today? What are you doing to better yourself today, for your growth today? And thus, make the world a better place. Because we're all one consciousness. And in prolonged fast, we really feel that sense of oneness. And as I speak this, I feel simultaneous groundedness. You can have the best of both worlds. It's not something that you have. It's only by grace. Spiritual progress is only by grace. See beyond a personal will. It's an intelligence that's animating us, animating our intelligence. An intelligence which is not separate from that divine will, which is done always on earth as it is in heaven. Soul completion, always. Determination, determined to keep going, in it for the long run. And a fast can pay off, I'm telling you. You think of the law of compensation, right? Nature hath done her part. Now it's time to do ours. such as the bliss of sacrifice, which is way better than any worldly pleasure. I can say this with confidence. It's not that I'm afraid of worldly pleasure, of which I've certainly had my fair share. I certainly don't condemn those that are indulging in such pleasures. Who am I to condemn? Especially when I've indulged in them myself. But now I see the bliss of sacrifice is, again, way better than any worldly pleasure. Sure, temporary. And you realize that the body is ephemeral and temporal and transitional. You start to value the eternal. You start to value consciousness, pure consciousness. And when you embark on a journey such as a prolonged fast, or you go out to the spiritual wilderness, maybe it's a lot of time in solitude, developing a certain detachedness from the sensory experience, or whatever the practice, whatever it is, whatever your spiritual practice, which can be a perpetual spiritual goal as you practice it. As you realize that eternal aspect of consciousness, there's a certain bliss that's always with you, and it coincides with a profound sense of peace that nobody can take away from you, and it's always with you. There's nothing anybody else can do to take that away from you. Wherever you go, this profoundness of experience is with you. It can't be bought or sold, so it's priceless. Thus, your values adjust. And it may not make sense to people who are perpetually, constantly operating in survival mode. There's nothing wrong with survival mode. That's a part of us that we don't want to neglect. We can respect that part of us, but we don't want to be trapped there. We don't want to be a slave to it. To enjoy food is alright, but to be a slave to it is the bane of life. As we grow spiritually and we realize that we are eternity, we are life, eternal life. We, again, identify with pure consciousness. It's pure like water, right? Consciousness, originally pure like water, and therein lies its power. When we identify with that, with life itself, life in its pure essence, water, pure water, the noblest and purest of all elements. So we identify with that, identify with pure consciousness and awareness. And when we embark on a prolonged fast, we start to become a timeless, formless awareness. And as we identify with this, we, in order to stay grounded with a sense of groundedness, and again that simultaneous transcendence, the groundedness, the root chakra, transcendence, the crown chakra, when we're operating in a timeless state of consciousness, we, more often than not, in order to stay grounded, we can develop some conscious attachments, whether that be a spiritual mission or a spiritual goal, or food. We don't depend on it, which we've proven to ourselves through a fast. We don't live by food. We don't live by material, physical substance alone. We live by spirit. The essence of the food. What is the food made of? Whether it be an apple or vegetable, that's life sitting out on the table. That's life in your hands. So we want to give that proper attention. We want to think in terms of life. But we don't live purely by that material. We live by the essence which it provides us when we ingest this. It's a miracle. You take this substance and it transforms into a human being. I'm not personally doing that. That's the intelligence within us. It's transforming this physical substance into essence, into spirit within us. And if you're having a lot of bowel movements, you might want to think about how much you're eating or what you're eating, because that's waste. And when you're into a prolonged fast, in the first few days, you don't gotta worry about it. The body will do what it does. It's kind of, the body's peripheral. It's not a focus. It'll do its thing. You don't gotta worry about it. And after those first few bowel movements, you don't really have any. There's such a lightness. There's such an emptiness. But there is a wholeness in that emptiness, because you feel a clear, open connection to something beyond this, beyond the five sensory experience. And for all we can feel that connectedness when we open the physical eyes and close our eyes, we can really sense that eternal bliss which is beyond time. On earth, as I look down, as it is in heaven. What a blessing. What a blessing it is to be alive out in the sunshine. Everything's alright. No, it's just fine. Having a hell of a time as I stand here and rhyme. Not even trying, it's just coming out, expressing. Absolute non-resistance in all circumstances. What could be more exemplary of excellence? No, I'm not saying I'm excellent by any means. I'm just speaking and rhyming and emanating this consciousness and saying whatever spirit wants to express. I certainly don't take credit for it personally. It's only by grace. Like I said, I gotta reiterate, all spiritual progress, all development, all unravelment, all letting go, all success, whether it be worldly or spiritual, it's only a result of grace. Leave the result up to spirit. Not try to control it, not try to forcibly control outcomes, my personal will, but it's my expectation, my anticipation. Not trying to control the future. Leave the result up to the Lord, the Spirit, whatever you want to call it. Right? Simply a label, simply a name. You don't want to confuse the label, what it points at, with the artifact. You don't want to confuse our name as me. I'm this. Somebody recently, and I say recently, is actually a while back, I said, well, who are you? You don't even know who you are. She said, I know who I am. I'm Debbie. And she said it so confidently. And I was, oh man, it was great. But he actually said her full name, but I'm not going to say the last name because, I'm not trying to, it's irrelevant. The point is, person thinking they're a person, identifying as a person. And of course, we all have that personal element, but we can compartmentalize it, not identify with it. Same thing with the body, right? Yes, we have this wonderful body, have a beautiful mind, have emotions which may arise at times. It's like a semblance of emotions. But we don't identify with it. You can utilize it. You can be your servant. The senses, the 5 senses, we don't have to identify with them. They can be our friend. They can be our servant. Now, we certainly don't want them to be our master, right? You don't want to be enslaved to them. The mind is a beautiful servant, dangerous master, right? We want to think and live beyond worldly pleasure. We don't want to just live for ourselves in the personal. We want to think beyond ourselves. That's why it's good to have a goal. A goal that takes us beyond ourselves, that helps us expand our consciousness, that allows us to think and be beyond a personal me, beyond a personal me-ness, so we can utilize our intelligence, we can open ourselves up to the greater intelligence all around us, which is simultaneously in the fly and in me as we exist in eternity. As I feel that I'm speaking with clarity. Originally, at the beginning of the video, I said there may be fogginess, but as you get into that flow state, non-resistance, it effortlessly expresses. Although I may stumble at times, that's okay. There's fundamentally no mistakes in this universe, only lessons. And as I feel this sense of connectedness with that which is all around us now, again, you don't got to worry about the how. Simply leave the result up to spirit. Let it animate. It's not something that there's a personal me to let. You reach a point where there's no one left to surrender. Because the one that's trying to surrender is absent. Just like the one who's trying to seek spirit. At a certain point, that seeker is absent. There's no personal seeker, because the seeker is the sought. The knower is the known. There's no difference. There's no difference between what is within and without. What is subjective and objective. It's all a state of oneness. It's unity consciousness. There's no even a slight sense of separateness. Because we feel that profound connectedness. And thus, there's a reverence for all of life. We see its sacredness. Whether it be ingesting a material, taking something within the bodily temple, or whether it be service, selfless service. That's why we survive. We ingest this so that it can prolong our service and live out our mission, whatever the Lord has in store for us. Whatever Spirit has in store for us. Again, we don't want to get hung up on the word or label, or a certain religion, or a certain identification, identifying with this and that, this form and that form, which is the content of consciousness, not pure consciousness itself. Of course, consciousness is in all physical form, but the difference between us is that we know there's a self-awareness, right? We have the capacity for awareness, to be subjectively aware that we are aware, to identify with that subjective awareness, which is eternal, which is constant, which is the constant of consciousness, not necessarily the content of consciousness, which is shifting and changing. Thoughts, the thought process that comes and goes, right? Different thoughts, different contents in consciousness, different objects as we shift our attention from that to this. But in essence, there's no essential difference. We feel this in a state of oneness. We can access this awareness, this subjective awareness, this profound sense of oneness in a prolonged fast. Through meditation, slowness, taking time to slow down. Of course, seeing your attention goes hand in hand with meditation. because we feel that light within, a certain, which allows us to feel a lightness and non-resistance, where we can simply realize we're the loving witness of all this. Be detached. There's a detachedness from a personal meanness, which allows us to be rooted in that witness the thought process. Realize that I'm not the content of consciousness. I'm not the thoughts themselves. And when you realize that, there's natural self-control. You don't have to force it. It's natural. You realize that you're not the thoughts. You're not a slave to them. You don't react to them. When there's a certain slowness, certain, let's say, bodily impulse arises, you don't immediately react to it. You don't act on it. You say, this is not for my highest good. It's not in accordance with my purpose. It's not for the world around me's highest good. Then I don't have to act on this. So there's no compulsion, because we're completely conscious, because we act consciously. Clarity. And that's reflected outwardly in our actions, which are guided by an inward sense of purity. She's always with us, like spiritual power. Nobody can take this away from us, like that profound peace. Nothing, nobody in the world can break it, can shake it, can interfere with it. Because you're unblemished. Because you're unsullied. Pure consciousness, awareness. And prolonged fast, again, for instance, can help us elevate from the root chakra, the earth element, purify that element so that we restore the water element. The sacral chakra, right? These are different labels. Again, we don't want to get hung up on them. In ancient times, they didn't have apparatus, external scientific apparatus to measure different brainwave frequencies, which we call beta, alpha, theta, delta. Theta, delta, right? Or earth, water, wind, fire. Same thing. That's what the ancients called it. Before we started measuring brainwave frequencies, just a different label. Earth element, beta. Root chakra, beta. Sacral chakra, alpha. Water element, alpha. Solar plexus, theta. Fire element, theta. Delta. Air element. Heart chakra. Beta, alpha, theta, delta. Earth, water, air, fire. Same thing, right? But the ancients, they didn't have the external way to measure it, the measurements, right? They went within and realized these different states of consciousness, these different frequencies. And we can do this through purification, through fasting, which helps us transcend the base functionality in this 3D reality of survival mode, of being rooted in that earth element constantly, and allows us to raise in consciousness to the water element. It helps us purify the elements. There's an ancient practice called Buddha Shuti, where we are conscious that everything in existence in the physical cosmos is an interplay of 5 elements, right? I mentioned 4: earth, water, air, fire. We won't begin to talk about space, and that's only really relevant if we, in terms of transcendence, if we want to explore the mystical dimensions and aspects of the human experience. But with other 4 elements, we can live a profoundly beautiful and wonderful life. Space is only relevant if we, in terms of transcendence. But we want to understand the elements, purify them. You can do this through a fast. You can go within and realize different frequency states subjectively, viscerally, not just claim we know intellectually because we read something somewhere, we read a spiritual book. We want to be honest with ourselves. Don't just believe me. Don't trust me. It's something that you got to seek. You got to go within, find out for yourself. Because we only know through experience. We can only teach from where we're at. Now. And even now is a concept. When you're deep in that slowness and an eternal state of consciousness, there is no now. There's no me to think that I'm present. I'm in the now. It's wordless. There's no verbiage. It's beyond language. It's non-linear. It's ineffable. You can't describe it. You can't pinpoint it. It's not something to label. Although we can ascribe words to it and talk about it, it's fun to do so, to try to describe it. And I love it. That's why I do it. That's why Spirit does it through me. Because it wants to express that which you know subjectively. Fundamentally, you can't describe it, even though I'm attempting to now. Gotta discover this for ourselves. Beautiful birds in the backgrounds. Perfect contrast to the stillness, the slowness, the silence. Birds singing their song. Beautiful. The aesthetics, right? It's not just the surface appearance. It's the aesthetics. The beauty. The beauty of nature. We can still revel in the beauty, but live for that which is beyond it. That which is beyond the five sensory experience. The Lord, our Creator, Father, cares more about that part of us, that transcendent part of us, and it does the physical part of us, right? And for all, simultaneous, the manifest world around us and the unmanifest. There's no essential difference, no fundamental difference. As far as subjective experience, there indeed is a difference. It depends on our state of consciousness at any given moment. Of course, there can be a flux, but as we evolve in spiritual experience and progress, that flux is lessened because we're more stable, because we're identified with the constant, the whole. Right? So we're not as emotional. We're not up and down and all around. Life's not a roller coaster. We're not subjected to the law of polarity as much. We're not perpetually in a flux, up and down and all around, because we're identified with pure consciousness, which is the constant, which is not in a state of flux. Divine Mother, Father, Creator. It's expressed in nature, the beauty of nature. All of life can be an aesthetic experience. When we're not in a state of transcendence, right? Pleasure is beautiful. There's nothing wrong with it. Because all of life has an intrinsic aesthetic beauty to it. But we don't want to live for it. We want to see beyond it. See with clarity that we indeed live in eternity. And thus we want to live for the eternal, not passing pleasure. It's like the personality, right? We can compartmentalize it. Yes, this food that I'm ingesting is a conscious attachment. I know I don't live by it, but boy am I thankful for it. I'm thankful for it. When you put it in a proper context, wow, there's many people in the world that are starving, right? Don't have access. They don't have access to adequate nourishment. So we can be perpetually thankful that our survival is taken care of. It's only by grace. It's like spiritual progress, right? Everything only exists by grace. We have all of our limbs by grace. It's only by grace that we can undo errors of the past. It's only by grace that we can transcend identification with the past. that we can see that our life as we exist now is not a consequence of the past, because we're being pulled magnetically by the future, by our destiny, which is in harmony, which is in accordance with divine will, perpetually. Whatever we may have done that we might not necessarily be so proud of, it has nothing to do with where we're going. Of course, we can reflect back on it and be like, wow, look at how far I've come. That's certainly better than thinking back to something great I did. Oh, I did this great thing in the past. No, because you're going to do even greater things as you spiritually progress. You can reflect back and be like, wow. Whether, it doesn't come lightly, sharing certain things openly with the public that are, deep and subjective. It takes a different kind of openness to be able to share stuff like this with the public. It doesn't come lightly. But as we open our heart, as we realize that state of oneness, simultaneous, there's a sense of openness, which allows us to share stuff like this. UPS. Hey, that rhymes. It's like I got a package, right? Instant access. That's another thing. Won't get me started, right? Instant access. You can just go on the phone and have it delivered right to your door. It's a beautiful thing. It's a blessing and a curse, right? Can be either way. It depends on the person. It's like technology. Depends on the user. It's a blessing and a curse. It can be a blessing or a curse. It's a blessing for me. So how I use it. Not a slave to it. I use the phone, it doesn't use me. Big difference, right? Use it for service. That's the purpose. Instant access, instant gratification. Just related to what we were talking to. In the past, how far we've come. Wow. I used to be a slave to the phone. Now it's completely different. I attribute this awareness to certain practice. Seeing retention, meditation, fasting. These ancient practices that I'm going to keep mentioning. Because again, I speak from experience. I know what it's done for me. And the freedom it's given me. And I want to share this. And like I said in the last video, if there's one person that this benefits, and I'm doing my part on making a difference. Not something that I take credit for. It's only by grace. When you have that humility is not even an emotion. It's not something that personality can claim. It's a state of consciousness where we're simply the loving witness. We're detached from personal meanness. We can utilize personality without identifying with it, without objectifying the world, without labeling. Just looking now, in a state of silence, and thus bliss, where you feel that sense of oneness, that deep, profound connectedness with all around you, without trying to control it, without trying to control the result, without trying to anticipate the next moment. Because there's only this nowness, foreverness. I think that's all. God bless.